that you may perceive me as the teacher, the guy that already knows all this stuff, but I've said it many times, and I'll say it again, that when I sit here and speak with you, I'm starting from that I don't know anything. And then whatever comes up, I take to be the fruit of the space. I take it to be the fruit of the space. I take it to be the opportunity that you give me to learn. It's an interesting thing when you look at it like that. The motivation to share what there is to share, and I assume, and I would imagine, and I would hope it to be the case for you, the motivation to share what there is to share is that it is significant, it's valuable, it certainly is wanted and needed in the lives that humanity is leading these days. It's certainly wanted and needed. And so, and then you know, when you look at a lot of these teachings, for example, I've been talking about the Course in Miracles recently, and that's just because I've been reading it. But you know, if you've been around here for a while, by this time there's a long list of things I've talked about, right? A long list of books I've talked about, a long list of teachers that I've talked about. And as far as I'm concerned, that's one of the signs of an authentic teacher. That an authentic teacher is looking at the opportunity to share and to teach as something that involves whatever resources will be useful. So I'm not interested in getting credit for something that Mooji said or Rupert Spira said or something that came from from anywhere or anybody. But I am interested in using it as a way to make the sharing powerful, or to make the sharing relevant, or to make the sharing gettable and useful. I think one of the biggest mistakes that humanity has made is to come up with this idea of God that people have, you know, that has this, I don't know if you look at it from a Christian standpoint. I mean, when I look at that now, it seems absurd to me that there's somebody up above, you know, looking down at us like Santa Claus. So I think it's an opportunity to really look at, well, what do we mean by God? And when I was talking last week about the miracle business, right, causing miracles, and in the very beginning I said the first step for this experiment, and then I hope you guys are playing with this a little bit, you know. I said the first step in the experiment is to forgive yourself. And that forgiveness means to remember who you are, right? And then the second step is to create from nothing and to create a context, right? To create a context. And the context that we're going to create is unconditional love. And then from that unconditional love, like a context, to start to look at what appears in your life, to see the difference it makes when that's the lens you're looking at it through, right? Well, the thing, you know, what I'm really talking about when we talk about this thing, if you're remembering who you are and getting a sense of that, and then you're creating the context of unconditional love, that's all a lot of semantics or a lot of language that basically says, be God. Isn't it? Isn't it? Wouldn't you say that unconditional love might be a good definition of God? Unconditional love? So I'm basically saying, without coming right out and saying it directly, be God. And if I'm saying be God, then I must I must mean by saying be God that you are God, that you've always been God, because as I have said here many times, the realization of the self that we speak of here is the realization of what's already true, not something that's going to happen, right? So, you know, it kind of gets interesting, you know, when you look at the idea, you know, and one of the things that inspired me to take this direction was something that Douglas Harding said in one of his books. And he said, the only way to know God is to be God. And I think that that's pretty accurate, right? Because what's the other possibility? The other possibility of knowing God is to think you know God, to believe in God, right? To have faith in God, right? But one of the things that we come to see in this process that we're involved in is thinking about it doesn't get you anywhere. I hope by now you kind of noticed, you know, thinking about it doesn't get you anywhere. In fact, thinking about it can take you down an unlimited number of rabbit holes. Thinking about it can take you down an unlimited number of rabbit holes. I was talking to somebody today in one of my sessions online, and it spontaneously occurred to me to say to her that thinking is the last thorn. Thinking is the last thorn. Now, in spiritual teachings, there's a way of talking about things that involves this idea of a thorn, and the idea of it is that, well, for example, I heard Papa G talk about this, and he said that you could say that you're walking in the forest and you step on a thorn and you get a thorn in your foot, and you take another thorn to pry out the thorn in your foot, right? And then you throw both thorns away, right? And so in the same way, we use thinking, right? We use thinking and use concepts, right? As a way of getting to the trouble, to the suffering, to the thorn, right? That we are dealing with in our lives. But then in order to experience the truth of yourself, the thinking has to go too, right? Why? Because the experience of the self experiencing itself is non-conceptual. The experience of the self experiencing itself is non-conceptual. It can't be conceptual because as soon as it's conceptual, it becomes limited. Do you understand? As soon as it becomes sexual, I almost said sexual. Freud would have loved me. But as soon as it becomes conceptual, it becomes limited because a concept by its nature is limited, right? If you talk about something specific, as soon as you talk about something specific, by definition, it's limited. And so what we're talking about here is unlimited, and therefore no words can speak it because it's unlimited, right? And yet many words can point to it, right? But none of those words are it, right? And then ultimately you are it, and you are experiencing it directly all the time. So and one of the ways this seems to work is that because you can't help thinking, can you, right? And you can't help using concepts, can you? We don't I mean, if we weren't going to do that, what would we do here? I mean, we could sit and meditate, and well, there's no doubt that would make a difference, but somehow that's not necessarily enough. So, we have to use concepts, and we have to do thinking, and we have to, as Alan Watts said, we have to try to do what isn't necessary, all right? We have to try to do what isn't necessary because we don't know how to be any other way. We're doers, right? We're human doers, right? And so we do try to do what isn't necessary, And the thing about doing what we try and do that isn't necessary is we actually do accomplish some things, right? We do develop understandings, right? You get these aha moments, right? Or you see something that you've been grappling with, and then all of a sudden it makes sense to you, right? Like that, right? And so because that's the case, we then have faith in the process. We figure that if we keep thinking about it, and if we keep learning about it, and if we keep deepening our understanding about it, and if we keep looking at it, and if we keep practicing it, then somehow it will eventually reveal itself completely, and there will be an end, right? We want an end. You want to come to an end, don't you? You don't want to keep learning about this the rest of your life. So one of the ways that seems to happen is that since you can't help doing this, since you can't help doing it this way, you'll do it this way. But one of the things that happens, and I wonder whether you've noticed, right, is it starts to create pressure, right? You start to feel frustrated. You start to feel, like, when am I going to get this? And I thought I had it, but I lost it, how long is this going to last? And if you're a serious seeker, that starts to build up pressure. It starts to create a contraction in the system, you know what I mean? And that can get so uncomfortable, right, that you decide, I'm done with this, you know what I mean? I'm going to start drinking, smoking pot, or something, I don't know, something that works, something that will at least give me some gratification where I don't have to keep waiting and think I'm there and then find out I'm not there, and so forth and so on. But the reality of it is that, as far as I can tell, when I look at my own experience, and if you've been at this for a while, you'll probably notice this if you look, that the tension builds and builds and builds, and then all of a sudden there's this breakthrough. And it's like you got it, like you see it. It's just like Brad Werner said. He was walking to work one day, and here's a guy that's been meditating, doing say Zen meditation for years and years and years before this happened, right? And again, remember the appropriate practice of meditation is a practice in which you're not doing it to get anything. And he was doing this for years and years and years. And then all of a sudden he's walking to work, and it was like the lights came on, and he saw everything clearly, and he had no questions, and everything was obvious. And he experienced this state of complete fulfillment, indescribable fulfillment, right? And then it shut down. And to his credit, he just finished walking to work. You know what I mean? For some people, they'd run and start a religion, right? So I think it's important to understand the nature of the process so that you don't get frustrated about how frustrated you get. So that you don't get anxious about how anxious you feel, or you don't get depressed about how depressed you get. Because it's just part of the process. And if you look at it, you'll see that it does tend to go that way. It tends to, if you're a serious student, if you're dabbling, you know what I mean? If you're dabbling, then you're relating to this stuff like a curiosity, or you're being a student, and it's an academic process, and you're just getting information, and your ego's probably going to use it to look good in parties, if we ever party again. Or whatever, just to think highly of yourself, if nothing else, right? But the reality of it is that if you're a serious student, and if you understand this is not just academic, and if you understand what's at stake here, and for me, I don't know about you, but for me, my goal in this process is to realize the truth about death completely, right? To realize the truth, because the day will come when you will be tested about that one, right? The day will come that you will be tested about that one. And if you allow yourself to really look and make contact with the reality of impermanence, if you allow yourself and you really allow yourself to make contact with what's in the mirror when you look at your body, right? Then that day is, because in reality, since time and illusion, that day is today. That day is today. And so the question is, and you know, I think that's a worthwhile target to aim for, right? Because if your experience of death is that it's not real and that you don't die, can you see what that opens up for you in this life? That opens up fearlessness, doesn't it? Because what can you be afraid of? It opens up the possibility of experiencing the truth of that summary sentence that is in the beginning of the Course in Miracles. You know, that which is real cannot be threatened, right? It has that be the truth for you. It has you experience that to be true. What is real cannot be threatened, and what is unreal does not exist. And therein lies the peace of God. And so what does that offer you? It offers you peace. It allows you to be present to your own death. It allows you to be thoroughly prepared for the last exhale, right? And to have that experience be one of letting go and one of peace, right? And one of completion and one of fulfillment, that you got your job done. You know what I mean? If it's true that what you're here to do is learn, and if what you're here to do is learn the most important thing you could possibly learn, which is who you are and what is true, and you come to your deathbed having learned that and knowing God because you're being God at that time, right? That's about as fulfilling as you can possibly be. Fulfilling as you can possibly get. And I say to you that that is something that is available through the practice that you're doing, through the understandings that you're developing, but more importantly, through who you're being in relationship to what's happening. So that if you experience threats in your life, and you think about your own death, and you get to a place where when you're experiencing these threats and you think about your own death, that there's no fear there. It's just no fear there. To me, that is a very worthwhile and valuable experience. You know, that there's just no fear there. It's okay. You're not at odds anymore with anything. You're not in conflict anymore with anything. You're not in conflict with people. You're not in conflict with time. You're not in conflict with your body. You're not in conflict with death itself. So that is the fulfillment of the possibility as far as I'm concerned. And I hope that you all stay on course with this work and these practices, and I hope that you're sincere, and I hope that you're committed, and one of the things that I think will support that sincerity and that commitment is your willingness to make contact with reality. Your willingness to make contact with reality and not turn away, not run away, but to face death, to face fear, you know, to face insecurity, you know, to face the reality that we're all challenged with every day now, that is more and more challenging, right? I mean, this has got to be, you know, you talk about a miracle is that something doesn't change, but it's completely different, right? A miracle, something doesn't change, but it's completely different. Well, it could be the case that for you to see the reality that we're living in right now, which in my view is probably the most challenging time in my life, I don't know about you, right? to be able to rather than be part of the herd, the naysayers, the fearmongers, right? Instead of being part of the herd, to be able to look at that and see the gift that it is. That's a transformation. That's a miracle, right? To see something as challenging as this, as threatening as this, as a great gift. Why? Because it's poking you. Is it not? It's poking you. It's saying, wake up. Wake up. Stop assuming you know anything. Stop assuming you can predict what's going to happen tomorrow. Who could predict this, right? Who could have predicted this? I feel like I'm preaching. So, but I'm preaching to the choir, right? Otherwise you wouldn't be here, right? You could be anywhere doing anything. So I want to really let you know that I appreciate your presence here, that I get who you are, and I get what you're up to, and I want you to know that I will continue to be here for you in every way that I can possibly be here for you. And I don't mean that like charity. I don't mean that like I'm a good guy, right? I literally mean that as an expression of my experience that I am you. And if I am you, how could I be otherwise? You see, how could it be otherwise? And that's the possibility for all of us, to experience that perception of each other, no matter what color your skin is, or what your political beliefs are, or how you look, or how old you are, or how stupid you're acting, or whatever the case may be, right? That in reality, who you and I really are, in truth, is 100% committed, 100% committed to each other. 100% committed to each other. Okay.